Turbo pumps up to flight speed and liftoff. And good afternoon from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where the team of flight controllers belonging to the Orbit 2 team are on console this afternoon, ready to support their Russian colleagues at the Russian Mission Control Center across the ocean in the homecoming of an unpiloted Soyuz vehicle, the Soyuz MS-14, which is wrapping up 11 days at the International Space Station in a test flight that will pave the way for the use of a modified Soyuz vehicle and a Soyuz 2.1A booster to launch crews to and return crews from the International Space Station beginning next spring. The Orbit 2 team has been on console since earlier this morning. They'll be presiding over the activities of the space station team on orbit 260 miles above the Earth. This team in the flight control room this afternoon is led by Flight Director Emily Nelson. On the right side of your screen, joined on console to her right by spacecraft communicator Diane Daly, who will be talking to the space station crew when required throughout the course of the remainder of the afternoon. Today's activities to bring home this unpiloted Soyuz spacecraft is in the hands of the Russian space control team, the flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow in the town of Korolyov. You're looking at a live view from a balcony camera overlooking the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Russian Mission Control Center. They will be monitoring the Soyuz for its automated undocking from the International Space Station a short time from now. The undocking is scheduled at 1:14 p.m. Central Time, 2:14 p.m. Eastern Time, wrapping up this week-and-a-half-long test flight that began with its launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The launch took place on August 21st, U.S. time. It was a perfect launch, the first time that the 2.1A booster had been used with a Soyuz vehicle. The 2.1A booster has been used to launch unmanned Progress resupply ships to the International Space Station, but it was used for the first time on August 21st in the configuration that will be used to launch crews to the International Space Station from Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome beginning next March. The climb to orbit was flawless, 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch. The Soyuz separated from the third stage of the Soyuz booster and began a 2-day journey to the International Space Station. For 2 days, the unpiloted Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft maintained a true course to the International Space Station and a flawless approach until it came to within about 100 meters of the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station on the night of August 23rd, in the wee hours of the morning, August 24th, Moscow time. At that point, the Soyuz spacecraft was unable to have its core's automated rendezvous system antenna lock on properly with a comparable receiving antenna on the Poisk module that is used to automatically guide the Soyuz in for a docking. The rendezvous was subsequently aborted by Russian flight controllers on the command of Alexander Skvortsov inside the Zvezda service module of the International Space Station, joined by Station Commander Alexei Ovchinin, the two cosmonauts residing on board the International Outpost. The Soyuz backed away to a safe distance away from the space station and went into a so-called racetrack trajectory, moving not only above the station but behind it to enable Russian flight controllers to begin a process in which they devised a very innovative plan in just 7 hours that was run by the International Partnership and the International Mission Management Team to bring the Soyuz back to a different docking port a couple of days later. But that whole process began with the relocation of the Soyuz MS-13 spacecraft that you see in this replay on the night of August 25th. Drew Morgan, Luca Parmitano, and Alexander Skvortsov boarded the same vehicle that they docked to the station in back on July 20th. and they moved to a safe distance behind the docking port on the Zvezda service module, rotated the Soyuz into the correct configuration, and flew above the station for a relocated docking to the Poisk module that you see on the left side of your screen. That freed up the aft port of the Zvezda service module. The Russian flight control team and Russian specialists concluded that the problem with the aborted docking of the unpiloted Soyuz on August 24th was due not because of anything wrong with the Soyuz vehicle itself, but a technical issue with the Corps' automated rendezvous system with the Poisk module. So what you're seeing here is the relocation with the half of the space station crew on board this Soyuz MS-13 spacecraft that arrived in July, relocating to the Poisk module. Alexander Skvortsov, in the center seat of the Soyuz vehicle, flew a manual undocking and relocation and redocking to the Poisk module, freeing up the aft port of the Zvezda service module. Just 24 hours later, on the night of August 26th, the Soyuz MS-14 was brought back into the neighborhood of the International Space Station in this replay that you're looking at, and it docked without problem in a flawless approach and link up to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, where it resides at the current time. So at the moment, the Soyuz MS-12 spacecraft that will come home on October 3rd with Nick Hague, Alexei Ovchinin, and spaceflight participant Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri of the United Arab Emirates, who has yet to launch to the station. It resides at the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The Poisk module currently is the home for the MS-13 Soyuz spacecraft that you just saw relocated 2 weeks ago by Skvortsov, Morgan, and Parmitano. And the MS-14 vehicle, which is at the aft port of the Zvezda service module, will depart a short time from now with the undocking command to be issued about 20 minutes from now. It'll take 90 seconds for hooks to open, and springs on both sides of the docking interface will then push off against one another to enable the Soyuz to undock, physically separate from Zvezda, and move to a safe distance away for its return to Earth. That aft port of the Zvezda service module will be the home for the Soyuz MS-15 spacecraft that is to launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on September 25th. We'll talk about that crew and their recent activities in just a moment.
Alexander, do you receive the image right now? Right now, I have the crosshair.
Nope, no human passengers flew to the International Space Station on the Soyuz MS-14, but Fyodor, a humanoid robot, was strapped into the center seat of the Soyuz vehicle for the ride uphill, as he is for the ride back to Earth later this afternoon. The robot was unstrapped from the Soyuz commander seat in the center seat of the Soyuz vehicle, was brought inside the Russian segment of the station, and this video taken last weekend shows Skvortsov and Ovchinin sending commands to the robot and testing out its ability to react to those commands. All of this testing part of the test flight of the Soyuz vehicle and this particular humanoid robot. Other refinements to this robot will be made in the future, and the Russian space officials will analyze its performance while on board the International Space Station before any determination is made for a reflight of this hardware. But very interesting video as Fyodor joined the crew on board the International Space Station for a few days before returning to the Soyuz vehicle that will be returning to Earth in just a few hours.
But you know, you can do it right now. Yeah, in a minute maybe I will activate the recording. Yes, we understand.
The two cosmonauts, as we mentioned, on board the International Space Station, Station Commander Alexei Ovchinin and Alexander Skvortsov, are in the Zvezda service module. They'll be monitoring the departure of the Soyuz MS-14 a short time from now. We'll talk about all of the entry milestones here in just a moment. Those two cosmonauts joined by their other 4 crewmates, 3 Americans, Nick Hague, Christina Cook, and Drew Morgan, and European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano of Italy. The 6-person crew has been working very diligently on a variety of scientific experiments and gearing up for a series of spacewalks that are planned for the late September, early October timeframe that will replace batteries for two of the power channels on the P6 truss of the International Space Station, the far port truss of the station. New lithium-ion batteries to be brought up to the station aboard the Japanese HTV, the H2 transport vehicle that is scheduled to launch on Tuesday afternoon from the Tanegashima Space Center in southern Japan on a Japanese H2B rocket. That launch is scheduled for 4:33 p.m. Central Time, which will be 6:33 a.m. in Japan on Wednesday morning, September 11th. Our live coverage of the launch of the HTV-8, or Kanatori vehicle, as it is called, the Japanese word for white stork. The launch of the cargo ship, the unpiloted cargo ship from Tanegashima, is scheduled for our live coverage will start at 4 p.m. Central Time. Again, launch scheduled at 4:33 p.m. Central Time next Tuesday afternoon, September 10th. But first things first, and that is the departure of the Soyuz MS-14 from the International Space Station coming up a short time from now. The undocking is scheduled once again at 1:14 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. The whole process of bringing the Soyuz home will begin with the physical separation of the Soyuz from the aft port of the Zvezda service module. The undocking, again, begins with springs on both sides of the docking interface pushing off against one another. The Soyuz will then depart from the station with several separation burns to a safe distance away from the station. Some 2.5 hours after undocking, the deorbit burn will be conducted, a 3-minute, 53-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines at 3:37 p.m. Central Time to slow the Soyuz down and enable it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. At 4:06 p.m. Central Time, the three sections of the Soyuz will separate through pyrotechnics. The center section, the descent module, which is normally occupied by a three-person crew, is the only portion of the Soyuz that survives re-entry. It will hit the Earth's atmosphere at 4:10 p.m., where temperatures around the Soyuz will build up to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit during the plasma regime. Once out of the upper reaches of the Earth's atmosphere, the chutes will be deployed, first a drogue chute, then a main chute at 4:19 p.m. Central Time to gently guide the Soyuz to a landing on the south-central steppe of Kazakhstan, about 87 miles southeast of the remote town of Zvezda, just as if it were a populated vehicle with a crew. This is exactly the same coordinates for a landing site for a crewed Soyuz vehicle coming home. Just seconds off of its landing site, soft landing engines will fire in a final braking maneuver, and at 4:34 p.m. Central Time, the Soyuz MS-14 and its humanoid robot occupant will be back on Earth. The landing is taking place in the dead of night on Saturday morning in Kazakhstan at the landing site, where it will be 3:34 a.m. Kazakhstan time. The Russian search and recovery forces, just as they would for a crewed landing, will be on the scene with helicopters, all-terrain vehicles, and other recovery personnel to secure the vehicle and then bring it back to Moscow for post-flight analysis. This test flight is crucial for the Russian space control team to test the Soyuz's modernized guidance, navigation, and control system and entry control system, not only verifying the integration of this Soyuz spacecraft with the 2.1A launch vehicle that will be used for all manned launches beginning next spring from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, but it will also aid in the development of an uncrewed payload return vehicle in the future that will enable the return of cargo to the ground from the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The landing again is scheduled at 4:34 p.m. Central Time this afternoon, 3:34 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning. That's 3 hours and 23 minutes before sunrise at the landing site, which is about 87 miles to the southeast of the town of Zvezda, where the Russian search and recovery forces would typically deploy for a crewed landing. The next landing of a crew from the International Space Station is scheduled for October 3rd, when the Soyuz MS-14 will bring home Alexei Ovchinin, Nick Hague, and United Arab Emirates spaceflight participant Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri. The first launch of a crew on the modified Soyuz spacecraft and the 2.1A booster is scheduled for next March, as we mentioned. These 2.1A launches will take place from Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The September launch coming up on September 25th of the next crew to fly to the International Space Station on the Soyuz MS-15 spacecraft is the next launch in the series and will be the last scheduled launch from the historic Site 1 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the same launch pad that Yuri Gagarin launched from back on April 12, 1961, to become the first human to fly in space. Yesterday, the next crew that will fly to the International Space Station, Jessica Meir of NASA on the right, along with Oleg Skvorpochka, the Russian Soyuz commander, and Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri and their backups. They strolled through Red Square there in front of St. Basil's Cathedral in the traditional ceremonies that take place pre-flight, where they laid flowers at the Kremlin wall by the locations where Russian space icons are interred. This crew will depart their training center at Star City, Russia, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, next Tuesday, September 10th. They will fly down to the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan for final pre-launch training, and their launch is scheduled at 8:57 a.m. Central Time, 6:57 p.m. Baikonur time on September 25th, and a planned four-orbit 6-hour rendezvous to take them to the International Space Station, with their docking scheduled at the aft port of the Zvezda service module, the same docking port that will be vacated about 10 minutes from now with the departure of the unpiloted MS-14 spacecraft. We are inside 10 minutes now from the time that the commands will be sent to begin the process of opening up the hooks that have held the Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft to the aft port of the Zvezda service module since its arrival on August 26th. Everything is in readiness for its departure. By the way, our live coverage of undocking will continue this afternoon until we no longer have usable video of the Soyuz as it departs the neighborhood of the International Space Station. There will be no live coverage of deorbit or landing of this Soyuz vehicle. We will update the progress of the Soyuz's return to Earth on the NASA website, however. About an hour or so ago, here in the flight control room at the Johnson Space Center, the flight director, Emily Nelson, polled her flight control team for a go for undocking of this Soyuz vehicle. She passed that information along to her Russian flight director counterpart at the Russian Mission Control Center. Everything is in readiness as we are now under 8 minutes away from the issuance of the command to open up the hooks holding the Soyuz MS-14 in place at the aft port of the Zvezda service module. Under 6 minutes now from the issuance of the opening of the hooks holding the Soyuz MS-14 in place. Once again, this is an unpiloted Soyuz spacecraft that arrived at the station after an aborted rendezvous approach on August 24th. It came back around for a flawless docking to the Zvezda service module's aft port 2 days later and has spent the past 11 days undergoing tests by Russian space specialists in advance of use of upgraded Soyuz systems on future Soyuz spacecraft beginning next spring. Just as if a crew were on board, this vehicle will back away to a safe distance from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn, a 3-minute, 53-second retrograde engine firing at 3:37 p.m. Central Time this afternoon that will slow the Soyuz down, allow it to drop out of orbit for its entry back into the Earth's atmosphere, and a landing at 4:34 p.m. Central Time, 3:34 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning, where the Russian search and recovery teams will be on scene about 87 miles to the southeast of the town of Zvezda, almost the exact spot where a crewed Soyuz vehicle would land, to secure the vehicle and bring it back to Moscow for post-flight analysis. The International Space Station is currently flying 258 miles above the Earth, moving from southwest and northeast, about to cross the northern border of China with Mongolia. 2.5 minutes now until the undocking command. The Soyuz docking system is now powered. We're under a minute until the issuance of the undocking command. That will begin a 90-second process to open up the hooks holding the Soyuz MS-14 in place at the aft port of the Zvezda service module. This is a view from the external camera on the Soyuz MS-14. We'll be seeing indications momentarily of the hooks beginning to jive open. And right on time, the hooks are jiving open. Once again, 90 seconds until the hooks are fully opened, at which point springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another, enabling the Soyuz to be set free from the aft port of Zvezda. Hooks continuing to jive open, standing by for physical separation. And physical separation coming at 1:14 p.m. Central Time, 2:14 p.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station flew over the border between northeastern China and southeastern Russia. So after 11 days of the International Space Station, the unpiloted Soyuz MS-14 is now flying free, headed for a landing on the south central steppe of Kazakhstan about 2 hours and 20 minutes from now. You're looking at the docking port on the aft end of the Zvezda service module. That will be the same docking port that the next crew to launch to the International Space Station will call home, as the Soyuz MS-15 with Oleg Skripochka of Roscosmos Jessica Meir of NASA and spaceflight participant Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri of the United Arab Emirates ease into the aft port of the Zvezda service module on September 25th. The Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft and the International Space Station about to fly into an orbital sunrise over the Northwest Pacific. We're about 1 minute away from the first in a series of separation burns that will accelerate the Soyuz's departure rate from the International Space Station. And the first separation burn is underway. This was an 8-second burn of the Soyuz thrusters to increase the opening rate between the Soyuz and the International Space Station at about 0.5 meters per second. This view now from a camera on the truss of the International Space Station, showing the Soyuz backing away from the Zvezda service module, again an unpiloted Soyuz vehicle that has been used for a test flight to provide data for Russian space specialists on upgrades to a guidance, navigation, and control system, the entry control system that will be in play later this afternoon. The spacecraft collecting data on its compatibility for launch with a Soyuz 2.1A booster, the same configuration that will be used to launch crews to the International Space Station from the Baikonur Cosmodrome beginning next spring. Russian flight controllers have uplinked to this unpiloted spacecraft deorbit burn parameters. Again, the deorbit burn itself scheduled at 3:37 p.m. Central Time, 4:37 p.m. Eastern Time, a 3-minute, 53-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines that will slow the vehicle down by some 18 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its return back to Earth and a landing in the pre-dawn hours Saturday Kazakhstan time at a landing site almost identical to what is used for crew returns from the International Space Station southeast of the town of Zvezda. great view from truss cameras on the International Space Station showing the departing unpiloted Soyuz MS-14, which made an automated approach and docking to the International Space Station back on August 26th. Spent 11 days at the station undergoing engineering testing, and now will automatically return to Earth for a landing later this afternoon on the steppe of Kazakhstan. With its departure, the mass of the International Space Station is now just over 917,000 pounds. After the Japanese cargo ship, the HTV-8 or Kanatori spacecraft, arrives at the International Space Station for a capture and berthing on Saturday, September 14th, assuming a launch next Tuesday, the mass of the International Space Station will have grown to almost 951,000 pounds. As we showed earlier in the animation of the entry sequence, the Soyuz vehicle again will conduct an automated deorbit burn at 3:37 p.m. Central Time. 29 minutes after the burn, the onboard computers will trigger a series of pyrotechnic actions to separate the three modules, the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft, the upper section being the orbital module that contains the docking probe and other avionics for the spacecraft. The center section is the only section that returns to Earth for a parachute-assisted landing. That is the descent stage. The descent module normally contains a crew strapped into three respective seats side by side. The only occupant is the humanoid robot Fyodor, strapped into the center seat of the Soyuz vehicle, the descent module. The lower section is the instrumentation and propulsion module that contains the solar arrays and obviously the propulsion elements, including the engines and the propulsion lines and the fuel tanks. The module separation is scheduled at 4:06 p.m. Central Time, about 4 minutes before the Soyuz begins to enter the Earth's atmosphere, and the regime called the plasma regime, which will last just over 2 minutes or so, in which temperatures around the spacecraft will begin to build to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, that heat repelled by the heat shield on the bottom of the descent module itself. Once the Soyuz leaves that portion of the entry at 4:19 p.m., the command will be issued to deploy the chutes on the Soyuz spacecraft, a series of drogue chutes followed by a large main parachute. And from that point, it's about 15 minutes from chute deploy to landing. One final burst of soft landing engines on the bottom of the descent module to offer a final braking maneuver, with touchdown expected at 4:34 p.m. Central Time this afternoon, which will be 3:34 a.m. Kazakhstan time at the landing site. The Soyuz and the International Space Station now have flown into an orbital sunrise over the northwestern Pacific Ocean, beginning a track from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator.
Go ahead, Moscow. This is Alexander. Alexander, cover the PRK valve. You have to be switched to closed position, and afterwards you can do all the closeout operations and deactivate the recording Copy. I am closing the PEV valve. Alexander, so you can actually report the results, of your photography. Did you notice any thing on the interface? Actually, in my opinion, the interface is clean, no FOD there at all. Copy that. Thank you. Good news. So could you please switch the valve of PRK Soyuz to closed position? In work.
This view of the Soyuz vehicle flying over the tranquil Earth below and the northwestern Pacific Ocean, in stark contrast to an overflight that the station made earlier today, about 6 hours and 15 minutes ago, when the station flew directly over the ferocious beauty of Hurricane Dorian, which at the time was just off the outer banks of North Carolina, moving in a northeasterly direction.
PRK application is closed. Unintelligible. Yes, we are powering off the video, and closeout ops are go. Copy. Moscow station, space to ground 1 for video, MPEG video downlink. Alexander, go ahead. All right. Am I go to downlink the video? Yes, your go. There is additional activity scheduled for you. I don't know if you have enough time before the DPC, but could you please take a look and just verify if you have enough time? So do you want me to downlink via OCA? Affirmative.
It has now been about 15 minutes since the undocking of this Soyuz MS-14 unpiloted spacecraft from the aft port of the Zvezda service module, continuing to track its departure to a safe distance away from the International Space Station, flying 258 miles over the central Pacific Ocean, moving from northwest to southeast. Again, you're looking at the Soyuz MS-14 spacecraft having undocked from the aft port of the Zvezda service module, heading for a deorbit burn of its engine. About 2 hours and 6 minutes from now, that will begin its trek back to Earth and a landing under parachutes in south-central Kazakhstan, some 87 miles to the southeast of the town of Zvezda. This vehicle launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on a Soyuz 2.1A booster on a test flight back on August 21st, U.S. time, August 22nd, Baikonur time, made a 2-day trek to the International Space Station, where it attempted an automated docking to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. That approach was aborted because of a problem on the station side of the Poisk interface on the Core's automated rendezvous system with the Soyuz vehicle. The Soyuz was commanded to abort its approach, backed away to a safe distance from the station, and after the Russian flight control team devised a plan to have Alexander Skvortsov, Drew Morgan, and Luca Parmitano relocate their Soyuz spacecraft, the MS-13, from the aft port of Zvezda to Poisk for a manual redocking effort on the night of August 25th. This Soyuz vehicle, unpiloted, made an automated approach and a flawless docking to the aft port of Zvezda the following night on August 26th, where it has spent the last 11 days. The flurry of activity at the International Space Station will continue this coming week with the scheduled launch on Tuesday afternoon U.S. time of JAXA, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency's unpiloted cargo ship, the HTV-8, the H-2 transfer vehicle, the 8th in the series of such cargo ships that will carry more than 4 tons of supplies, experiment hardware, and spare parts to the International Space Station, most notably a new half-dozen lithium-ion batteries and adapter plates that will be installed during a series of upcoming spacewalks on the far port truss of the International Space Station, the P6 truss, to upgrade the power systems for 2 of the station's power channels. That launch is scheduled on Tuesday, September 10th at 4:33 p.m. Central Time, 5:33 p.m. Eastern Time, with our coverage on NASA TV beginning at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. The HTV-8 will take a 4-day transit to the International Space Station, arriving for a capture and installation to the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station on Saturday, September 14th. The Soyuz MS-14 traveling at 5 miles a second over the central Pacific Ocean. You can tell in this view the upper portion of the Soyuz, called the orbital module, again contains the docking probe and other avionics for the Soyuz systems. The center section, which resembles a bell-shaped configuration, is the descent module, normally occupied by a 3-person crew, in this case only occupied by a humanoid robot, the Fyodor, that made the trip to and is returning from the International Space Station, where it underwent engineering testing. The white section at the bottom of the Soyuz with the solar arrays as the instrumentation and propulsion module. After the deorbit burn of the spacecraft to slow it down and enable it to drop out of orbit, that's coming up in 2 hours at 3:37 p.m. Central Time. Some 29 minutes after the deorbit burn, there will be a command sent for the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz vehicle. The center section, the only section that survives reentry, with its heat shield repelling the fiery reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere, and then deploying parachutes to slow it down for a landing in south-central Kazakhstan. Again, the landing scheduled at 4:34 p.m. Central Time, 3:34 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning. The Soyuz MS-14, having conducted a pair of separation burns, continues an opening rate away from the International Space Station, flying over the Pacific Ocean from northwest to southeast, soon to approach the coast of Chile. This is Mission Control Houston, fading from view in this camera on the truss of the International Space Station is the receding image of the Soyuz MS-14, which undocked from the International Space Station some 33 minutes ago at 1:14 p.m. Central Time, 2:14 p.m. Eastern Time. Wrapping up 11 days at the station, the unpiloted MS-14 flown to the station on a Soyuz 2.1A booster from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, arriving on August 26th for a test flight and engineering testing by the Russian flight control team in Korolyov. This modified Soyuz with upgraded motion control systems and entry guidance systems will be the same type of Soyuz that is launched on a Soyuz 2.1A booster to carry crews to the International Space Station from Baikonur beginning next March. We are approaching the point where the Soyuz is transitioning for its activities involving a deorbit burn and automated 3-minute, 53-second retrograde engine firing that's coming up 1 hour, 49 minutes from now. That will slow the Soyuz down, enabling it to drop out of orbit for a high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted landing on the south-central steppe of Kazakhstan at 4:34 p.m. Central Time, 3:34 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning, where the Russian search and recovery forces will be standing by to safe the vehicle and bring it back to Moscow for post-flight engineering analysis. So the unpiloted flight of the Soyuz MS-14 to the International Space Station is now complete. All that's left is its re-entry and landing back on the steppe of Kazakhstan. That will not be televised on NASA television. We will update the web and the blog with information regarding the Soyuz's descent back into the Earth's atmosphere and its eventual landing in south-central Kazakhstan. And with that, we'll wrap up our coverage for today with one programming note. The next vehicle that will be sent to the International Space Station, the unpiloted HTV-8, the H-2 transfer vehicle, named Kanatori, which is the Japanese word for white stork. It is scheduled to be launched, unpiloted cargo ship with 4 tons of supplies and spare parts, including a half-dozen new lithium-ion batteries and adapter plates for the P6 truss power systems on the International Space Station. Its launch is scheduled on Tuesday, September 10th at 4:33 p.m. Central Time, 5:33 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 6:33 a.m. in Japan on Wednesday, September 11. Our live coverage of the launch from the Tanegashima Space Center in southern Japan will begin at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday, September 10th. So we invite you to join us for all of that and all of the activities of the Expedition 60 crew on the International Space Station on the website at www.nasa.gov. For now, have a great weekend. This is Mission Control Houston.